Hey everybody, welcome to drive-thru review number 443. Today we're going to take a look at Traders of Osaka, which is a game I actually kind of already reviewed, but it was called Traders of Carthage. Now this is the new edition from Z-Man Games. I did get this provided to me by GameSurplus.com. This one, sort of quick review, looks a lot better than Traders of Carthage. The gameplay is exactly the same, but I'll go ahead and do the gameplay overview for you and then tell you what I think of it. Had a chance to play this again with my lunch group, and I will tell you what I think of it after the walkthrough. So let's go. So Traders of Osaka has a typical sort of boring theme. I don't want that to scare you away though. You're basically trading goods in the Far East in Japan and trying to avoid storms and sort of hedging your bets against those storms and sort of the card flop and kind of watching what your opponents are doing as well. So here are all the components you can get in the game. You can see there's a board here, and on this board you're going to have ships in different colors, and these ships are not necessarily controlled or indicative of the player, but they match the different goods that are out on the board. So you've got green goods and green ships and so on like that. And then each player has two markers in their color, and you have a sort of a score marker and then a reserve token. And I'll explain what those do in a minute. But then you're also going to deal out cards to each player until they've got 8 gold worth of cards or more, then you'll stop dealing. And then a player on their turn can do a few different actions, and the goal of the game, of course, is to score the most victory points. It works a little bit interesting in this versus other games. So you have one of 3 possible actions. The first thing you can do is buy goods, and you can see you've got the market here. It starts off with always 5 cards in it, and then the farm. When you buy goods, you always buy from the market, and you have to buy every card in the market. And this is the value of the card. So this is 3, 8, 10, 15, 17 points, or 17 gold worth. So you would have to discard 17 gold worth of cards into the discard pile here to buy that up. And then you would go ahead and actually place any cards that you bought right in front of you. Now the other thing you can do is you can take a card. You simply just take a card and then you add it to your hand, and this is going to give you more buying power. And the final action you can do is actually reserve a card. You take a marker in your color, and then you can reserve any card here in the market or even in the farm. Now you can also reserve a card in the market. You may, for example, want to reserve this 5 because maybe you want to snag that later or be able to buy that, but you can't quite afford it. So at that point, let's say the next player goes and the hand player goes, and when he wants to buy, he can buy every card here, but because you've reserved it, he doesn't have to buy this, and he can't buy this. He only would buy these 3 cards there. This would be a total of 8 to 10 bucks, and so let's say he bought these like so, and then at this point there's only one reserved card, and that's for the white player. Now if it came back to me, then I could buy or take this card into my hand. And if there are other cards, for example, like this, let's say I had these 2, if I wanted to buy, I have to buy all of my reserves and then everything else that's not reserved. But let's say it came back to another player and they had either we'd emptied this market here, or we had actually come to a part where it was our turn and this was only a reserve for somebody that wasn't us. Then at that point you're always going to refresh. In either of those cases you take all 3 of these here from the farm always comes down, and then you always take 2 cards and add it. So you can actually have quite a few cards sort of stack up in here, and then you always refresh the farm. So you know a little bit of what's coming in the future, but not everything. You get 2 kind of random cards. And then this becomes very expensive to buy again. So what is one of the sort of outcomes of buying? Well, let's say I had bought stuff. Well, let's make this a little bit more reasonable, like so. We had, let's say, 2 red cards and then 1 blue card, and I was white and I could buy all of these. So what's going to happen is, since I bought 1 blue and 2 reds, the blue is actually over here going to move 1 space. You can see these spaces here. If you buy 1 card, that color ship is going to move 1 space. If you buy 2 or more cards, then that ship is going to move 2 spaces, never more than 2. And then as we buy and buy and buy, these ships are all going to kind of move along, and then we're going to go along here. This is maybe several buy actions have happened, and then we get to the point where red moves here, or even possibly 2 at the same time. At that point, players are going to have to score any cards in front of them. So let's say we score red and blue, and then yellow is going to be in these 2 danger spots. You see these 2 red spots? You don't want to have too many cards of the good matching that ship in here when other ships score. So what we're going to do, actually, let's say that we were white and we had these 3 cards, or let's say we had these 4 cards in front of us. We get to actually score these. So what's going to happen is, it's very interesting to explain, but it's not really complex. So you're going to take all the cards. You have 3 red cards. You take the highest value on a card. In this case, we have a 5. So you take 5 times the number, which is 15. Then you round up to the nearest 5. So in this case, we have a perfect divisible by 5, so that's 15. And then in this case, we'll take all 3 because we're going to score 3 points because you divide it by 5. So we had 15 divided by 5, so that's 3. We'll take those and then we'll put these under our score marker there. Now for each color that you score, you're going to get a chip in that color. And that can actually add to the total. So if later on we had done like this, it would be 5, 6. For each chip, you actually add 1 to the highest value. So it would be 6 times 3. In that case, it would be 18 points. So in that case, we're actually going to round up to 20. Remember, we always round up to the nearest divisible by 5. And then we're going to flip these over, but that's 4. So we'll take 1 card off the top, actually, and then be able to score that. And in that case, we, of course, we get another red chip. And then if we scored blue, of course, we do that. This would be 2 times 1, so that's 2. And then you flip that over, and then so we round up to 5. We'll stick that in there like so, and then you get a blue chip and so on. Now, what did I say about these red spaces here? In the previous game, these were called pirates, but this is just rough seas. I kind of like the pirate idea, but I also like sort of the idea that you're traversing this long distance to make this sail. If you had any yellow cards, let's say we have this yellow card here. Excuse me, that's not yellow. I'm sort of colorblind right now. Let's find a yellow card, Joel. This yellow card here, and any ships in here, you actually have to discard that card and lose that to rough seas. Now these here will actually reset to Osaka, and then anything in the rough seas will reset back to the sort of midpoint. But you can actually save these cards if you have insurance. Now insurance is as follows. You can see the 2s and the 3s have these little insurance guys there. I don't know what they are, but you can actually discard these at the time of the storm to preserve that. So if I had this 3 here in my hand, I could discard that, and then I sort of tap that card that I preserve, and then that's safe forever. So I've got that. It's a very interesting mechanic, sort of strategically, is you can kind of build up a bunch of these and save them, and then you don't worry too much about that, and you kind of balance that with the flop and what the other players have. That's, you get into that like after 10 or so plays, which I played a lot of this game. These 2s though, they can reserve, or excuse me, insure 2 cards. Now they have to be the same color, so these can only reserve 2 greens. This card here can only reserve 1 yellow, and so on. So you've got to keep that in mind. So the 5s are good because they give you more buying power, you know, if you take cards for money, but you want to sort of buy them up because you're going to get, you know, more points and get those extra points at the end of the game. But the 2s and 3s are good because they do insurance, so that's kind of cool. Now you play the game until somebody has 8 chips or more, and then that's the end of the game. And then you total up the number of victory points here, and then the number of chips is the tiebreaker. It takes about a half hour or so, but it's very simple. You either take a card to use it to buy all the cards, or reserve a card. The only real tricky thing is that whole dividing by 5 thing, but that's not that complicated. It's very well explained in the rulebook. Don't let that shy you away from it. Okay, so that's Traders of Osaka, and like I said before, I was a fan of the original. I think this one looks a lot better. The theme is just slightly different. You know, it's pirates versus a heavy storm, so take that as you will. The gameplay is exactly the same. All the components and cards, everything is the same, just look different. Really enjoyable game. Very, probably best, I think, with 3 or 4, and I've kind of had disagreements with people, I guess. Most people seem to like it not with 4. They like it with 2 or 3, but I like sort of that extra layer of pusher luck. It just kind of keeps it dynamic and fresh, and sort of the unknown of the economics of it. You know, you get those extra cards, the extra flops, the cards are overchanging a little bit more, and you know, you've got to deal with the storms a little bit more often. You can get kind of caught with your pants down a little bit, which I enjoy. It kind of fits the theme of the game, so I like that. You can kind of, it makes the insurance a little bit more important in that way. So I prefer it 3 and 4. A lot of people do like it with 2 more than 3 or 4, so kind of give or take there. It's not horrible with 2 in my opinion. I just prefer it with a little bit more dynamics, a little bit more chaos. You got to be a little bit more mitigating with the actions that you take. But it looks gorgeous on the table. It's very exciting. You get the new flop of the cards, and it kind of changes the dynamics, kind of the current market situation, and you kind of lightly gets those economic gears turning, but the game's super simple. You know, take a card, buy all the cards, or reserve a card, and that's it. And then they have the whole divide by 5 thing, which is really irritating to explain because I've had to do it twice now in video, and then I don't know how many times in person. But once people do it once or twice, you get it. And the rule book is very, very good about explaining how to do that. And they give lots of good examples about some of the situations where you might grab an extra card or not have enough cards to sort of meet the demand of this, you know, amount of victory points you're supposed to put in the stack. But a high recommendation from me. Definitely, I'm glad they reprinted it because it was sort of I wouldn't call it a grail game, but it was very hard to find. A lot of people really liked it, and I really liked it, and frankly felt bad about doing the review of it when I did it, but I've really enjoyed it, so I did the review. But now you can find this pretty readily, very cheaply, of course. And again, I got this from Game Surplus, so they definitely have it in stock, and something I definitely recommend folks pick up. It's worked awesome, you know, for my lunch group as well. You can play it in like half hour, 40 minutes, about that. So take a look at it. Thanks.